Brett, can you confirm that that was the target?
Yeah. John, defense officials are telling us that they indeed believe that the video that you're looking at here at the right side of the screen is in fact the crater left by those 4 bunker buster bombs from the B-1, this strike designed to take out top leadership targets. Now this, we're told, is in the residential neighborhood, the Mansour neighborhood, which is an upper class neighborhood in Baghdad. It's essentially in the heart of Baghdad, a little bit to the west of center of downtown. It's also next to the Grand Mosque in downtown Baghdad. Defense officials tell us that they have seen examples in this particular area of Iraqi military equipment being put up against mosques, hospitals, and schools in this one neighborhood. They are very familiar with this particular neighborhood, the Mansour neighborhood, and they are saying that this tape that we are seeing, this came in from Abu Dhabi TV, is in fact the remains of this strike that U.S. officials believe may have taken out Saddam Hussein and his 2 sons. Do also want to point out that we mentioned that this strike happened at 2 o'clock. It actually happened at 2 o'clock Qatar time, 3 o'clock in the afternoon Baghdad time. Some clarification of that. But it was broad daylight when this strike happened. And again, you see the crater left there. That building essentially destroyed.
Now, Brett, address from the Pentagon point of view, please, if you can, the points that Ambassador Ross just raised, and essentially the basis for everyone's caution about this. I mean, no confirmation that Saddam Hussein has been killed. It is possible. You could say, I suppose, that American officials were hopeful. But this is a guy that doesn't go into a group of 50 people. He, as far as we know, he doesn't come above ground. As far as we know, he doesn't like to be around that many people, especially essentially a ready-made target. Why do they believe that he did this?
Well, first of all, I don't have confirmation from the Pentagon that there were 50 people at this meeting. That is coming from other intelligence sources telling a number of other people that have been working this story. We know it was a meeting of some sort, according to a number of different sources. Now, I can tell you that there are ground intelligence reports, that it's human intelligence on the ground. I was told by one official that it was multiple sources of this that initiated this time-sensitive target of opportunity strike. So they felt pretty confident going in that he was in there. Why he would do that, why he would meet in that kind of setting, I don't know. And Ambassador Ross brings up a skepticism here that I can tell you is shared here at the Pentagon and across the administration. They don't know for sure, but a number of different intelligence sources saying that they believe he was inside.
Bret Baier, I know you work in the Pentagon. I'll let you go. Let me just reset the story for everybody. We are working a story in which we have evidence, as you can see on the screen, of a massive attack by a B-1 bomber dropping 4 JDAM 2,000-pound bombs at about 3 o'clock this afternoon, Baghdad time, in the belief that Saddam Hussein and other Iraqi leaders were gathered in a building that might have been a restaurant in the Mansour district of Baghdad. We had intelligence that said he was going to be there, and we had a urban close air support team in the air. This is essentially a flying hit squad that included a number of planes that could respond instantly to information. A B-1 in the air in the neighborhood immediately targeted this restaurant slash home complex, and 4 2,000-pound bombs struck this building. It is possible that Saddam Hussein and his 2 sons were in the building and were killed. At this point, there is no confirmation. U.S. officials are saying it is possible. They are confident that he was in the building at one point. They're not confident that he was actually killed by this strike, and they're waiting for certain information in the coming hours that might confirm that he is dead. Still with us now, Ambassador Dennis Ross. Ambassador Ross, this is a perplexing story in a way, because there is it's obvious the bombs hit, and it's obvious they were acting on information, but what's not obvious is the result. You just can't tell at this moment if Saddam Hussein was hit. How important is it for the Arab world, and for Iraqis, for Americans, for the war effort itself, that this one man be killed?
I would say it's the overriding objective you have to have, because this is a system that was built on him. He built the system on abject fear. He built the system on abject brutality, and it was him. Everyone was afraid of him, including those closest to him. People like Tariq Aziz, who had been with him for literally his whole career, feared him.
Don't let him go to the screenwriter.
The whole issue, I think, here is just understanding that everything radiates from Saddam Hussein. If Saddam Hussein is out of the picture, it doesn't mean there will not be pockets of those who fear what might come next, and who fear there'll be retribution against them, and they may continue to fight, but any organized resistance is likely to be very low, number one, if not existent. Number two, I also believe you're likely to see major elements of whatever organization remains looking for a way to sue for peace, to save Baghdad, to claim they're saving the country, and indeed to save themselves. So you take Saddam Hussein out of the picture, you are likely to see some sue for peace. And the other important element is, of course, the Iraqi public that is very likely to begin to rejoice when they truly believe he's gone will not do so unless they're certain that he's gone, because after all, they have a pretty rich history of who he is, how he seems to survive, and how he always wreaks vengeance and retribution.
You know, Ambassador Ross, please stand by. Let me go back to Lieutenant General Tom McInerney, retired from the U.S. Air Force. General, this is, if U.S. forces got Saddam Hussein, it is a tremendous coup. The problem that I was discussing with Ambassador Ross remains. How are we going to demonstrate that we got him?
Well, Dennis described a few ways. Right now, I'm from Kansas City. I'm going to join Ambassador Ross on that, because there may have been too many sources, John. We need to look at this a lot closer, and then we need to look at some after-action things that happen. But it seems to me that there may have been too many, and if he's trying to beat it out of town, he would like to leave the impression that he, in fact, was killed in this raid. And, of course, he may be beating it up to Tikrit and then over to Syria somewhere to get out of town. We're going to have to do a lot of work before we say that he, in fact, is dead.
General, we thought we got him once before, and we know he has doubles. Do we take into account in calculating all these things that he might send somebody out that looks like him, so we could go through this exercise, think we've killed him, and then he rises like Lazarus again and shows his people you can't kill Saddam Hussein?
Exactly, John. And he may have, there may be an exit down there underneath a tunnel that he has moved elsewhere. Clearly, that particular restaurant is in a residential area, if you look at it, but it was very close, within a half a mile, maybe a mile, of the sphere of influence of where the 2nd Brigade of the 3rd Infantry Division is operating. So it seems a little strange that they'd show up there with 50 people, particularly at that time of the day. We had just blasted in there in the morning. But we've got to wait and see, and as Ambassador Ross said, there are a lot of indicators that may show up in the following days.
You know, Dennis, Ross, even if Saddam Hussein was not killed in this particular attack, evidently there was at least some intelligence that he was in that building, perhaps not there when the bombs landed, but that he was there. Does this nonetheless create a real sense for him that he can't go anywhere without bombs dropping?
I think the answer to that is yes. I mean, the fact of the matter is the metaphor of the noose tightening around him is no longer an abstraction. It's a reality even for him. So the fact is the whole world is closing in on him. And I also believe these are the kinds of circumstances in which you will begin to see he can trust fewer and fewer people. And the more he, in fact, looks like he has to hide out, the more that I think it creates an impulse on the part of, again, some of those who may not be in his immediate circle, but who have the means of coercion, the means of violence, may decide that this is the time to, again, save the city, save the country. And contemplating actions against him, which they've never contemplated before, might become much more likely in an environment where it looks like our march is now inexorable.
You know, General McInerney, isn't this also a way for a crafty and sly and cunning and ultimately the ultimate survivor, Saddam Hussein, to also figure out who is the spy? Call a meeting, everybody goes to the restaurant, one guy doesn't show up, he drops a dime, the bombs drop, Saddam Hussein says, now, who survived the meeting?
You're exactly right again, John. He's xenophobic. He's got more different personality characteristics. He's testing. He's doing a lot of things. Again, as Ambassador Ross said, 50 people is a lot of people to try to keep something secure. And if, in fact, that's what it was, that's what is driving me to rethink this problem, that it may have been a setup to have us focus on this area for days while he's moving in another direction. But again, we'll see things over time, maybe. I don't think the Pentagon is going to think that this is it. They're going to hope. They're going to reevaluate everything. But he is very capable of doing this kind of deception, and we've got to be very cautious before we take a bite on it.
You know, Dennis, Ross, maybe you can explain the psychology behind this. If Saddam Hussein set up a situation for the Americans to bomb this restaurant and kill a bunch of leaders of the Ba'ath Party that he didn't need anyway, and he is going to get out of Baghdad, he's going to go to Tikrit, or maybe he's going to go hide in Syria. Does he want the world to know he's alive, or does he want to creep away, leaving the world thinking he might be dead? What would be the advantage to him in either of those scenarios?
In the near term, there might be a value in having the world think that he was dead, precisely because it would allow him to escape, or at least to go into hiding, maybe in Tikrit, maybe someplace else within Iraq. I don't think it's going to be so easy for him to melt into Syria. I'm not sure that Bashar Assad, who might want to show that he's supporting the Iraqi people, is going to be so keen to look like he's embracing Saddam Hussein. And I don't think, by the way, that Saddam Hussein would trust that he could count on Bashar Assad. I do think it's possible he might think that he could hide for a while within Iraq and then try to organize some kind of resistance, some kind of guerrilla resistance to demonstrate that he's still around. At some point, he would want to reemerge. So I think if you're thinking about it, if you're approaching it from the standpoint of his psychology, survival is the first issue. And his attitude is, look, he's been in a lot of tough spots before, and somehow he's survived before. So the first objective is survive. If creating an impression that he's dead now helps him to actually survive, so be it. But eventually he'll want to reemerge to show that, in fact, he's rising out of the dead once again.
Let's take a look at Abu Dhabi TV right now. We're seeing a little curl of smoke coming up someplace. And of course, that is not unusual. There have been a lot of bombings. This is that shot of out of the Ministry of Information building, I think. Greg Palcott is in Amman keeping an eye on this, and he knows that territory intimately. Greg, can you help us through it as we're watching this, what appears to be a little bit of smoke rising from nearby the camera location in Baghdad?
John, from my information, what we're seeing right now is the Al Rashid Hotel area. That, of course, is the famous hotel where all foreign journalists, including Fox reporters, stay in easier times. I can't confirm that, but that's one indication that we're getting. The information we're also getting is that there are explosions being heard around the Al Rashid Hotel. That was one of the focal points for the early morning thunder run by the 3rd Infantry Division tanks. What I can also tell you on this particular story, John, and obviously there's a couple stories happening right now as we speak, is that explosions, flashes of tank fire have been seen coming from the new presidential palace. This is the palace along the Tigris River where the 3rd Infantry Division have held up for the night. There seem to be some indications that these tanks, that some of the elements of the 3rd Infantry Division might want to make a move north, we are told, from that palace area, but we have seen no movement of tanks. Prior to that, it was pretty quiet up until about 4:45 in the morning, Baghdad time. And at that time, according to various reports, there was a lot of machine gun fire, explosions, and bombardment of
Greg,
the compound.
let me interrupt you and
Powerful
just tell you that
flashes.
you're going to hear some more about that right now. Ollie North joins us on the phone. He is on the east bank of the Tigris River looking into the city. In fact, the camera's probably panning around towards Ollie. Ollie, of course, is with the Marines. Ollie, what can you tell us?
Greg's absolutely right about what he just said. It was about 4:45 this morning. I gotten back from a casualty evacuation run where the helicopters just sat down on the pad, and all hell broke loose. It was like somebody just, the clock clicked at 4:45, and boom, the city went up. Artillery, airstrikes, and interestingly enough, Greg and John, a significant amount of anti-aircraft fire, which, quite frankly, most of us had kind of assumed was gone. It appears that the northwest quadrant of the city still has some anti-aircraft capability because it chased 2 tornadoes out of the area, and it was promptly followed by something probably from a B-1 or a B-52 way overhead, massive explosions, very likely from a JDAM. As of right now, all quiet except for the airstrikes going overhead and continuing to follow on with obviously very precise targets inside the city. The advantage that Saddam has right now, there is a fairly good breeze kicking up a lot of dust, and that does obscure some of the visibility on the ground. We're down to probably a mile and a half visibility and a ceiling of about 1,000 feet. Good enough to fly in, but not particularly good for being an airborne spotter trying to peer through some of this stuff. Interestingly enough, John, that story that came out a couple hours ago about Saddam and his sons going to lunch while the palace is being ransacked by treasure hunters is being greeted with widespread skepticism over here. I've relayed the story several times to different Marines of different ranks, and they all kind of roll their eyes as though, come on, are you telling me that Dad took his 2 kids to lunch while his palace is being taken apart by the Third ID? We don't think so. So wherever that story got started, there's a lot of skepticism here among the Marines.
Well, Ollie, stay on the phone and listen. Let me go to Brett Baer. Brett Baer is at the Pentagon, has been digging around. Of course, the story is there is a fact involved that there was a strike on a certain neighborhood in Baghdad, the Mansour district. 4 JDAM 2,000-pound bombs were dropped by a B-1 bomber after there was intelligence that Ba'ath Party leadership and Saddam Hussein and his 2 sons were there. There is no confirmation, of course, that they were there when the bombs exploded, so we do not know if Saddam Hussein was taken out in that attack, and we don't really even have hard information that he was in that building. What we do know is 8,000 pounds of explosives fell on a restaurant. We're hearing what now? We are hearing that, Ollie, that there is more gunfire down at the palace, which the Third ID took and was making its base. So there is a lot of action going on. And, Ollie, the logic of this story, not to say that it's a fact and not to say that we necessarily believe it, but the logic of the story is that Saddam Hussein went to a place that he was fairly certain the American air power was not targeting, that is, a civilian area. So that's the logic of the story from your Marines. Meantime, we're seeing.
John, that would say that any place Saddam Hussein ought to clear out quick before somebody finds out he's been dining there at some point.
Yes, well, exactly. We're looking at a picture now coming from the palace area where Greg Kelly and the Third ID have made their headquarters in Baghdad, just a few miles from the airport, and a good jumping off spot for these. You can hear the firing going on there, and there have been reports all night that Iraqis have been firing at the Third ID, at the palace. So they've apparently been engaged in a gunfight during the darkness hours. Back now to Bret Baier at the Pentagon for some more information on the many stories that are working. Saddam Hussein alive or dead? What's going on at the palace? Are the Marines under fire? Bret, what can you tell us?
Well, John, we can kind of tie all of these things in together just in a geographic perspective here. The palace, where U.S. troops are currently fighting apparently with Iraqi forces that are trying to lob artillery, and there were machine gun fired shots that we can report were heard in and around that area. That palace is about 3 miles away from the Mansour neighborhood. This is the residential neighborhood where this leadership strike took place. Again, just recapping, we've been talking about it, but there are intelligence officials say that there were pieces of intelligence developed at roughly about 1 in the afternoon Baghdad time that Saddam Hussein and at least one of his sons, possibly 2 of his sons, were in a meeting inside this building in the Mansour neighborhood, which is an upper class, high-scale area of Baghdad, in the center of Baghdad next to the Grand Mosque. And at that time, they were confident of the intelligence. They called in the strike. A B-1 bomber was used. It was a part of the urban close air support that had been activated the day before, 24/7 loitering essentially over Baghdad, called in for strikes, targets of opportunity, and also supporting ground troops. This B-1 dropped 4 2,000-pound bunker buster bombs on that one building. And we saw some video earlier from Abu Dhabi TV of the aftermath that we can confirm from defense officials was in fact this strike. Essentially a huge crater left there, and many people believe that no one inside that building could have made it out alive. Now, whether Saddam Hussein and his 2 sons were actually there is still unclear. There is optimism, I can tell you, across the board in the administration. However, again, no definitive word yet, no confirmation. Now, as Colonel North has mentioned, troops are in and around Baghdad, that particular area, so we will likely see some moves into that area. We've seen these thunder runs, if you will, these columns that have been moving throughout Baghdad over the past couple of days. We mentioned that there are troops now at that palace just 3 miles away, so we'll see. John?
Bret Baier, thanks a lot. I hate to interrupt you, but I can see Greg Kelly is up in Baghdad. Greg Kelly, it sounds like they're shooting at you. What's going on?
No, John, they're shooting at them. There's a mortar position going off on Saddam Hussein's front lawn, shooting at some dismounts, they call them. These guys who get out of buses and come at American forces. We're coming to you from one of those palaces that was taken yesterday by the 2nd Brigade combat team. There's another one just up Kadisi Expressway that is still in the 2nd Brigade's control. Also, the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, that is under control, as well as the National Parade Ground. And as I speak, operations are continuing to expand coalition influence inside Baghdad. But I wouldn't put this in the Thunder Run category anymore. It's not like we came into Baghdad and got out of Baghdad. We are here, and we're staying here. And the commanders tell us they are expanding their influence in the city. I saw earlier on the screen that there were reports of shots being fired into the presidential compound, the palace here. That is certainly true, but it's been basically happening since shortly after we got here early yesterday morning. There was an extended firefight in the backyard right by the river for several hours. As you can hear, mortars are still engaging enemy some distance from us. And basically every 45 minutes or so, there's some sort of RPG or small arms fire coming into this compound that has to be dealt with. It's and the troops have learned to live with it. One more thing, there is a lot of curiosity about the Fox News report of Saddam Hussein's demise. Everyone here wants more information on that. They're hoping for the best here. Right now, it's picking up again as far as combat activity. There were a few hours of kind of quiet last night. Yesterday afternoon, it sounded like it was truly the Battle of Baghdad. Coalition airstrikes pounding the city. 2,000-pound bombs seem to go off every few minutes or so. That's quieted down for most of the night, but things are starting to pick up again.
Greg,
John?
Is that palace now an American base? Is that a permanent base?
I wouldn't go so far to call it a base, but it is a point from which they are operating tactically. They are hesitant to call it a base, but it's for now a position from which commanders are managing other operations, so you might as well call it a base. I think base implies that we're going to be here for a long, long time, and they've kind of want to not put that word out there. They don't think we're going to be here very long, as in more than a week or something like that. So whether you want to call it a base or not, I guess it's a little it's up in the air, but it feels fairly secure, even despite the firing. I mean, there's perimeter security 24 hours a day, but there are also guys, shaving and sleeping inside the palace, relaxing, eating inside the palace, that kind of thing.
Greg, through the miracle of global communication, we can hook Bret Baier up with you from the Pentagon. He's got a couple of questions he'd like to ask you. Bret, go ahead.
Hey, Greg, great job over the past 24 hours. Some amazing pictures and reporting there. Listen, I heard your interview with Colonel Perkins about coming in that he estimated between 600 and 1,000 Iraqis killed in the taking of that palace. And I'm interested to hear what kind of resistance. You said guys on foot, a lot of these suicide bomber kind of types. Can you explain more about that? I mean, is that what we're seeing on the ground?
Hi, Brett. Yeah, good to talk to you. First thing about the body count, Colonel Perkins will also go on to tell you that it's not an exact science and it's not a priority. And that was kind of a broad estimate, 600 to 1,000. He'll tell you right now he's not sure. I mean, because the killing, quite frankly, continues. But most of what we saw yesterday coming in were these kind of paramilitary, sometimes Fedayeen suicide squads coming at the 2nd Brigade and other units in trucks, usually white pickup trucks, trying to ram into the side of vehicles where they would explode. And a lot of these trucks were shot before they could do that, but they had secondary explosions. And we think that means there were bombs or other kinds of ammunition on board those trucks. They really can't tell if there's a significant Republican Guard presence or not among the Fedayeen, but it mostly seems to be a kind of an uncoordinated, desperate response to our presence here. Brett?
And one more thing, Greg, about the questions on how we're going to know who was in this facility that was bombed. I know that's not right near you, but maybe fairly close by. Any word on the ground there whether some of your troops with the 2nd Brigade or other troops are actually going to go out and check out this leadership target that may have been taken out? I think it's about 3 miles from where you are.
Brett, they asked me if I had any information. They heard it first from Fox News, the word that Saddam Hussein was killed or possibly killed along with his sons. So they don't have any special insight into that. They're looking to us for information. I'm looking to you for information on that. And there's no word that we're going to be combing through any kind of facility looking for Saddam Hussein's phone. The question was brought up, though. I think you mentioned it earlier. It's going to be difficult to verify whether or not he was in there. If it was in fact hit with a 2,000-pound bomb, there will be very little left as far as human remains. It may have to come to somebody saying that they did see him in there. They know he was in there before the bomb hit. That might be the only way to verify that Saddam Hussein is lost.
Greg, it was just so you can tell everybody where you are, it was 4 2,000-pound bombs, so it was 8,000 pounds worth of explosives. As we glance around, does that look like we have a medevac situation going on there?
Yeah, checking it out right now, John, along with you. What's that, Mel? Yeah, our Doc Meadows are on our way over there. I have to point out that there have been 4 soldiers lost in this fighting since it began yesterday. 4 soldiers from 2nd Brigade lost. Also, you heard this yesterday. 2 reporters were also killed by indirect fire, Iraqi indirect fire yesterday. 1 Spanish reporter, 1 German reporter who's been with 2nd Brigade. So far, since this started, we've lost 4 reporters and 4 soldiers all together from 2nd Brigade. We'll try to get more information on that. Hopefully he is just injured. You can see 1 soldier is carrying an IV bag, and he is receiving a lot of attention.
Greg, there's 2 of the soldiers and the 2 journalists were lost in a missile attack on the Tactical Operations Center. Do you happen to know where the other 2 were lost?
2 soldiers were lost. Yes, 2 soldiers were lost as a result of the indirect fire, actually, along with those journalists. We're not sure if it was a mortar attack or an artillery attack. Also, two soldiers were lost as trying to secure a road. They were hit by RPGs. I mean, a rocket-propelled grenade hit them, point blank, and that's how they were lost. Also part of 2nd Brigade. John.
Greg, returning to the subject of this attack on the leadership target in the Mansour district of Baghdad tonight, obviously the guys you are with are very curious about whether or not that was a successful attack, as we are. We all want to know if Saddam Hussein was killed. Do they think that if he were killed, that these crazed suicide attacks would stop?
I don't think so, and it depends who you ask. But remember, there have been other reports that Saddam Hussein was killed. I mean, there's been speculation about that for a couple of days now. In fact, this palace that I'm standing in front of now was hit shortly before the ground war started, and for a few days there was also speculation that he was dead. Yet the fighting continued. The Fedayeen, the Al-Quds, even the Republican Guard continued to fight, even when we were speculating that Saddam Hussein was dead. So they are curious, but they don't think that the news of his death is a necessary guarantee that the fighting's going to stop.
Now, Greg, we saw one reconnaissance by force, that spectacular trip you were on. We saw another one yesterday into within sight of the press building in downtown Baghdad. Can we all assume that from the location where you are, more of these reconnaissance in force will be headed out?
Oh, definitely, yes. Operations are continuing. They want to expand their influence in Baghdad, and there are operations ongoing right now. They kind of stopped calling them thunder runs. Thunder runs meant you were going into Baghdad and you're coming out, but now they are working from inside Baghdad, going to other parts of the city, and then restaging back here or somewhere else. So those operations definitely continue. We can tell you more about some of them when they get back. John?
Well, are they operations that are essentially armored operations as opposed to this sort of building by building scenario that we heard so much about before you arrived in Baghdad?
Well, we are with an armored brigade. They've got more than 70 tanks, more than 50 Bradley fighting vehicles. And in a way, these guys are kind of rewriting the book on the way urban warfare is fought. You used to think that you wouldn't take a tank downtown. A tank doesn't work well downtown, they said. It needs standoff range, distance from the enemy to engage it effectively. Well, what they're doing right now, they tell us, is rewriting the doctrine on tank warfare and urban warfare. And they've shown now through, I think, 3 cities, An-Najaf, Samawa, and now here in Baghdad, that they can come into a city, armored vehicles, heavy armored vehicles, who are accustomed to fighting in the desert, and actually take control in an urban environment. And they seem to be doing it quite well.
Can you report that they are in and operating in any certain neighborhoods and have taken control of any certain neighborhoods in Baghdad? I tell you what, I'll repeat the question.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
I'll repeat the question. Are you able to report that the unit you were with has gone in and taken over some neighborhoods in Baghdad?
I wouldn't go so far as to say that they have taken over neighborhoods, but they, as they delicately put it, they are expanding their influence and showing a presence. The kind of hope here all along has been that by coming into Baghdad, by showing that the U.S. is not afraid to actually enter the city and fight, that hopefully that would be kind of an expediter for the regime to collapse. They are hesitant, and I would probably say it would be inaccurate to say they're actually controlling neighborhoods, but they are expanding influence and showing a presence throughout the city, and they hope that's going to have an impact. They probably could. They have enough hardware, they have enough personnel to actually lock down the city internally, but they're hoping that their presence here will have even more of an effect, and the Iraqis can take the situation into their own hands.
Greg, let me take just a moment to set the table and tell everybody what's going on while they look at you. It is midnight on the East Coast, 8 a.m. in Baghdad, and we're following a developing story in Baghdad. U.S. forces have targeted a leadership target in Baghdad, struck it with 4 JDAM 2,000-pound bombs. There was some information that Saddam Hussein and his sons may have been in that building. The building was certainly demolished. All that is left is a crater, but it is unknown at this point if Saddam Hussein was in the building, if Saddam Hussein is dead or alive. Obviously, it is a very important point. The U.S. government at the highest levels and down to its most obscure levels of special operators in and around Baghdad are trying to figure that question out right now. However, while that is underway, we have Greg Kelly with the 3rd Infantry Division, who is at bivouacked, if you will, at one of Saddam Hussein's palaces and is keeping us up to date on what the activities there are of the 3rd Infantry Division. So, Greg, maybe you can set the table for the day. What if we were along with you, what would we expect your unit to be doing today?
They're going to be doing more of what we said earlier, expanding their influence in the city. Companies and battalions will be going on patrols throughout the city trying to remind the Iraqis that we are here if they even need any more of a reminder. There's also a priority to hold on to this palace that we're located at right now, as well as the palace a little bit up the Qadisiyah Expressway, as well as the National Parade Ground, these major symbolic points of interest that are now under coalition control. And there's hope that even though these operations are going to continue, the reality will set in with the Iraqis that we are here, that we hold these major points of interest in town, and that will help the regime collapse in on itself. So just by being here, they're hoping that they're going to have an impact, and maybe they won't have to do that much more for this thing.
You know, Greg, just a few hours ago, we were seeing pictures of American tanks moving alongside the Tigris River. Just within sight of the information agency. This has a strange look as if we have lost Greg. Can you still hear me, Greg? We appear to have lost the picture. In any case, let's go back to Bret Baier at the Pentagon. Bret, maybe you can help us all understand what we heard Greg Kelly reporting to us.
Well, yeah, obviously from Greg's reporting, they are now operating at that palace in downtown Baghdad, essentially a staging area, going out on missions, coming back to there, and continuing to essentially get a bigger toehold inside Baghdad. We've heard some explosions in the past few minutes near the Ministry of Information, which is also nearby that palace. We can tell you over the past 24 hours, U.S. troops with the 2nd Brigade, the U.S. Army, was surrounding the Ministry of Information at one point, even as the Minister of Information, Iraq's Minister of Information, who has become a very visible character, was outside saying that none of the coalition forces were inside the city. But again, that's over the past 24 hours. Now Greg Kelly saying they are establishing a point there and moving forward. I do want to wrap up, John, what we have been talking about all night, this leadership target that was struck, and kind of talk about it in the broad picture again. As we know it, according to U.S. officials, a piece of intelligence was developed on the ground, actually from multiple sources, human intelligence, that Saddam Hussein and his 2 sons were in a meeting in a residential area of Baghdad called the Mansour neighborhood. We understand that the facility may have been a dining facility as well as a house, unclear there, but there was a meeting going on. U.S. officials confident that Saddam Hussein at one point was inside that building. A B-1 bomber was called in about 1 hour later. This happened at 3 p.m. in the afternoon, Baghdad time. 4 bunker buster bombs, 2,000-pounders, were dropped on this building. And the remains are what you see here that were shown on Abu Dhabi TV. Essentially a huge crater left there. U.S. officials that we've talked to, a number of different sources that my colleagues have been touching base with, say they are confident that Saddam Hussein and his sons were inside that building at the beginning. Now, whether they are dead as the result of this strike, U.S. officials and here at the Pentagon and Central Command cannot confirm that definitively. They do not have concrete evidence of that. And this, like the first strike in the war where we saw that bunker hit, there will have to be some more evidence gathered. But they can say that a number of people were in that building. They believed those to be top leadership targets, and that this time-sensitive intelligence was acted on quickly. And there you see what was left of that building not much.
Brett, it is a question that will come up over and over again, so let's do it now. How is the United States ever going to know that Saddam Hussein was in that building, that he is dead? If he slipped away and is not heard from for weeks, we might think he's dead, and he's not.
We've asked that question numerous times tonight, John, and I can tell you that they're working on all cylinders to try to get the intelligence on the ground, to pick up radio intercepts, any kind of intelligence inside Baghdad about the fate of Saddam Hussein. However, that being said, Pentagon officials and officials at Central Command say this is not about one guy, and they continue to reiterate that. However, obviously everyone understands how important and significant that would be if Saddam Hussein and his two sons were in fact taken out.
Well, Brett, I mean, they say it's not about one guy, but the reality is they need the people of Iraq and Baghdad to come to the realization that Saddam Hussein will not come back to haunt them. He either has to be in a jail cell or he has to be dead, doesn't he?
You would think that, but Defense Secretary Rumsfeld said today, if Saddam Hussein and his leadership are not in control of the country, even if they're not captured or confirmed dead, that they essentially become irrelevant, and that the regime is then, in effect, changed, and that throughout the country it would be a convincing job that coalition forces are there to stay, that the people there can be protected, and that Saddam Hussein would not come back. Obviously, the best thing, according to U.S. officials, would be Saddam Hussein behind bars or dead, but they're going to have to work to confirm that, especially with this strike and that crater.
All right, Bret Baier, I know you got a lot of sources there. I'm going to let you go talk to them. Meanwhile, I'm going to go to Simon Marks in Amman, Jordan, who is very familiar with Baghdad and can tell us something about the Mansour neighborhood. Hi, Simon.
Hi, John. Let me tell you, when we first drove into Baghdad a few weeks ago, it was late at night, and one of the first things you see as you drive into the city are the bright lights in this Al Mansour district. It's not quite like the Las Vegas Strip, although compared to everything else in Baghdad, it certainly strikes you when you drive into the city that this is an area populated with night spots and restaurants, very popular with the wealthy elite in Baghdad. And reviewing the historical record, it is a district that has not been lucky for the family of Saddam Hussein. 27th of June, 1993, U.S. forces launch a cruise missile attack on Iraqi intelligence headquarters in the Al Mansour district of Baghdad in retaliation for the attempted assassination of U.S. President George Bush in Kuwait. So there'd be a certain historical neatness about all of this if all of this information is confirmed. 12th December 1996, Saddam Hussein's elder son Uday is seriously wounded in an assassination attempt in Baghdad's Al Mansour district. August 2002, the date August 14th, opponents of dictator Saddam Hussein wounded his youngest son, Qusay, 2 weeks ago during an ambush at a traffic circle in the Al Mansour district of Baghdad. So this is a part of the city where the Hussein family has operated time and again and appears to have suffered difficulty time and again at the hands on occasion of US-led forces, at the hands on occasion of Iraqi opposition groups who have tried to overthrow Saddam Hussein. Seems absolutely extraordinary to all of us here that the Hussein family would still be returning to that district even while US-led forces were occupying the presidential palace, a matter of probably less than 2 miles away from where this explosion occurred. But nonetheless, they do seem to have liked returning to that district time and time again, despite, John, the difficulties that they've encountered there over the years.
No, Simon, we know that we've got a few hundred special operations people in Baghdad. They're moving around and can watch various people, keep track on them. They can tap into phones. They've done a lot of work to follow Saddam Hussein and locate him. And we believe that the tape we saw the other day, whether or not it was taken that day, was Saddam Hussein walking around that Al Mansour neighborhood. Can you explain why, what logic there could be in the mind of Saddam Hussein or his sons or his advisors that he would be above ground, out of a bunker, that he would gather with numerous people who themselves are targets, that he would let people know where he was going to be, some of whom might be turning against him. Why would he do that?
I'm not sure I'm going to be able to explain to you, John, the mind of Saddam Hussein, but I can tell you in those pictures that we saw of him wandering around that district, allegedly him wandering around that district that we brought last week, at the start of that roll of videotape, and in fact the thing that first alerted us here in Amman to the fact that we were about to see something pretty dramatic on Iraqi television, was the fact that there appeared to be almost some kind of presidential motorcade driving this guy through the streets towards that district. So not even an attempt, if that was him in those pictures, to cover up the fact that he was traveling around the city, which, given all the intelligence sources available to the United States, seems even more curious with hindsight now that we know that once again some kind of leadership target has been attacked in the Al Mansour district. It's very difficult to understand why any member of the Iraqi leadership would feel free to wander around Baghdad at this point. But look at the information minister. We know exactly where he's holding his daily briefings. He's speaking to reporters every single day at the Palestine Hotel, just earlier today, denying things were occurring in Baghdad that we know were taking place 1 mile away from where he was standing. These guys do not appear necessarily to be acting in the logical fashion in which other political leaders in other parts of the world might act when US forces were breathing down their necks. I think it exudes an enormous confidence on the part of these people that they have their country behind them, they have their supporters. No doubt if that was Saddam Hussein wandering around the Al Mansour district, he felt extremely emboldened by the fact that people were rising up to hail him and to congratulate him on his brave defense of the city. One wonders if there isn't just an enormous information gap at the top of the Iraqi leadership,
Simon,
about
let
what's
me interrupt
really
you
going
to
on,
explain
John.
what we're seeing on the screen. These are U.S. warplanes live over Baghdad. If I recognize this plane, this is that A-10 anti-tank plane, also known as the Warthog. It is a vicious tank killer, and it carries a Maverick missile, which locks on a tank with a video camera in the nose of the missile, and then follows that picture in. So Warthog's operating over Baghdad. Let's go now to Peter Brooks. He's a former CIA case officer who is joining us. Peter, where are you? In Washington?
I'm in Washington, John.
So, Peter, what do you make of this story? I mean, you know, I'm not trying to throw cold water on it, and we all hope it's true, and we all hope it worked out. Certainly was a quick response by the U.S. military to intelligence it got rather quickly, hit this place in the Al Mansour district with 4 JDAMs, 8,000 pounds worth of explosives. Whoever was there certainly was killed. But the idea that Saddam Hussein would be walking into a restaurant to have a meeting with his associates about how to escape from Baghdad now that the Americans are closing in seems a bit far-fetched. And by the way, we keep an eye on that A-10 Warthog as you are speaking. Peter, what do you think of
Well, I
of the
agree with you,
strike
John.
tonight?
I agree with you, John, but you got to remember this guy has a tremendous ego. He's been a dictator. He's ruled this country with fear. He's probably delusional, and I sense that he probably doesn't have a good sense of what's going on in the rest of Iraq. I think he probably shoots the messenger. We talk about here in the United States about not shooting the messenger when somebody brings you bad news, because it's important for management to know the good news and the bad news. But I would imagine a lot of his generals are not giving him the bad news for fear that they will be sacked or purged. I mean, look at the Minister of Information, for instance. I mean, I can't really believe he really believes this, but it's possible that the information coming into Baghdad is false. And so he thinks that he may have greater security than he actually has. I mean, the fact that there are American troops probably operating a mile or so from where he was, I mean, he probably just doesn't know it, and he has this sort of swagger and confidence, and he may be delusional about the situation about him.
Well, wait a minute. Back up a second. You're talking about the information minister, al-Sahaf, and just to remind our viewers what we're watching, this is a live picture over Baghdad. That is an American anti-tank fighter plane that essentially, or bomber, that essentially targets tanks on the ground and is a prolific tank killer. So keep an eye on what it is doing. I suppose that is possible, since my eyes aren't what they used to be, that that could also be a global hawk reconnaissance plane. But in either case, it's an American plane operating with impunity, over Baghdad. Peter, let me just ask you another question. Is it possible that that the information Minister al-Sahaf is denying the obvious, that the American troops are within a block of him, simply because if he were to tell Saddam Hussein they are, he gets shot, and it's easier
That's
to
certainly
lie
a possibility.
to the world.
Absolutely. I mean, he killed a number of his generals after the last Gulf War, and these people have been ruled by fear. I can't believe that the Minister of Information doesn't understand the situation. But I think it would be difficult for him to walk into Saddam Hussein and say, the troops are a mile away, the American troops are a mile away from where you are. In fact, there are anecdotal stories from the last war that he summarily executed the air defense general and some others because of their inability to fight the Americans and the trumping at the hands of the American forces during Desert Storm last time
Peter,
around.
let me interrupt you. We're going to go to Rita Cosby in Studio N. She has been working the story and has some new information. Rita, what do you got?
Yeah, John, I can tell you that U.S. officials are telling me that the CIA provided intelligence which led to this, what could be a very successful strike today in Baghdad. And indeed, we have been reporting, we were the first ones to report that it was a combination of human intelligence and also eavesdropping. And I understand there were a number of special ops guys on the ground who actually physically saw Saddam Hussein go into that location with his 2 sons. Now, I'm also told some more details that apparently there were between 2 to 3 dozen, I'm told, Iraqi security types that were there along with Saddam Hussein. I asked about Tariq Aziz, the deputy prime minister, and they said we are not certain about that at this point. But they are saying that it was the CIA. We didn't know what agency had provided intelligence or if it was even another country. We are told the CIA provided intelligence. Also, just to give you just some specifics as to just the amount and incredible success of the intelligence that the U.S. has had, we were able to determine exactly when they went in. We had 4 or 5 separate confirmations. Then we were able to determine that they were standing within 4 to 6 meters of each other, one of my sources says. And I'm told that they were standing not in a dining area, but either in a room adjacent to a restaurant or a separate sort of house next to a restaurant that was either next to or below the restaurant at the time. And that we were able to listen in on some conversations. And ironically, at the time, they were talking about slipping out of the country and out of the city at least, and possibly some suggestion that they may go to Syria, but talking about some escape routes, at least to get out of Baghdad itself. Certainly way too late to be talking about that. But just to show you the amount of intelligence, and I'm told that within an hour of getting a tip from human intelligence, then they got another confirmation. They, of course, had the B-1 bomber in the area in the staging theater ready to drop bombs. When they had another confirmation from human intelligence, they said, okay, make the strike. When they made the strike, from when they actually made the decision to actually executing the strike, I'm told it was within minutes. Now, also, I can tell you from talking to U.S. officials at almost every single agency tonight, I've talked to probably about 30 or 40 different officials. A number of them seem extremely confident that Saddam Hussein was there, also his sons. They're telling me that whoever was inside, and if Saddam did not slip out, he is dead. They didn't see him go out, but they also are pointing out the fact that they do know that this facility did have a bunker. It did have an underneath emplacement, as it's described, and possibly may have been connected to some tunnels. So there is still some doubt, but they are saying that they do believe there's a very strong chance he and his sons were inside. And they also say that they believe that they will get some sort of confirmation possibly in the next few hours. It's already daylight there. They say there's a number of physical ways you can check. Obviously, when you got the force of 4 2,000-pound bombs dropping on you, we're talking about human remains at this point, but there is a way to do some identification with that. Also, monitoring communications. We know that they are really locked into these communications, able, as I mentioned, even to be talking about, listening to what they were talking about during this meeting. So with the combination of listening to communications and human remains, I am getting a sense from a number of U.S. officials there's a bit of confidence that they may have gotten him, and we'll certainly get at least a confirmation one way or the other fairly soon. And, John, this is very different than the kind of sense I'm getting from U.S. officials after that first strike, the very first night of the war. Right away, they said, wait, we can't be too optimistic. We don't know. On this one, they seem pretty confident. There's there's a sense of optimism. And again, the U.S. officials tell me the CIA provided the tip, which led to what may be a very successful strike.
Rita Cosby working her sources, and I'm going to let her go work them some more because we'd like some more information on that. I have Peter Brooks standing by, and we're going to talk to Brad Baker now. You're seeing, listen to what we're hearing. We're hearing that A-10 Warthog firing off what appear to me to be chaff or flares to avoid fire coming up at the Warthog. But that may be fire going down. Let me go to Brad Baker now. He's a former Army Ranger and a Gulf War veteran, and has some thoughts about what Saddam Hussein might have been doing in the last weeks and perhaps even months about figuring out a getaway plan. Brad, what is the book on Saddam Hussein getting out of Dodge?
Well, I think that some of the information that we're gathering and hearing right now about operatives on the ground, hearing conversations about Saddam and possibly others making a plan to get out of town, I think that he actually did realize that, you know, the tanks were there and the time had come for him to make a plan to get out of there. It simply amazes me that he hasn't tried to do this earlier. But then again, we all know that from the previous war and from this war, he's just shown true that he's not a great leader and he's not a great strategist. But as Norman Schwarzkopf said, other than that, he's a really good general.
All right, Brad, hang on a second. We're keeping an eye on that A-10 Warthog tank buster flying around over Baghdad with impunity. Even though Ollie North told us a little while ago there was some anti-aircraft artillery action in the northeast quadrant of the city, it does not seem to be affecting this A-10 Warthog on patrol for tanks. Peter Brooks, you know, Rita Cosby gave us some information about the gathering at this restaurant in the Al Mansour district of Baghdad, a civilian district, no military targets around. One could assume that it was not going to be targeted for bombing by U.S. forces, and maybe Saddam Hussein went there to meet his leadership council to plan on his getaway. But Rita's reporting that our intelligence agents on the ground there saw him go in the restaurant. Now, I have no reason to doubt her sources, although I find that a kind of breathtaking possibility that Saddam Hussein is pulling up to a restaurant, kind of like valet parking and going in. What do you make of that?
I think this guy has a tremendous, like I said, a tremendous ego and tremendous confidence, and feel he's in the company of people who love him. It's not really the case, or people who fear him. And I think it's very possible that he has to get around town some way, and that it's very possible that he did actually pull up in a car with with flags on it and some other things, and get out of it and go into this restaurant, feeling that he could do this with impunity,
but what
which he was
happened
obviously
all
wrong.
these tunnels we've heard about? What about this great underground world Saddam Hussein built in Baghdad? I mean, we've been expecting this, that we're going to have essentially an army of tunnel rats to go down and root him out. And now we find out he's driving around in the streets in an upper-class neighborhood and pulling up to go into a restaurant.
Well, first of all, he thinks this is a sanctuary because we have decided not to target, rightfully so, decided not to target civilian areas. So he's not hanging out in his palaces. And as you know, John, as you've been watching, they've been pounding these palaces time and time again, anything with any sort of military value, and a lot of these tunnels are gone. So I don't think that his tunnels are necessarily in this part of town, although it says there is a complex there, that they're probably in other parts of the city, and it's eliminated, and this was probably one of the few places left where he could go. He felt he was safe because he was in a civilian neighborhood. We wouldn't target him, but he obviously was wrong.
Peter Brooks and Brad Baker stand by. Let me go back to Simon Marks in Amman, who has some information to give us. Simon, what do you got?
Hi, John. Yeah, we've just heard from Abu Dhabi Television. We're monitoring all the various Arab television networks that we see here. Abu Dhabi Television reporting that in this latest round of bombings in Baghdad, the local office of Al Jazeera has reportedly suffered some significant damage. At least one casualty reported in that local office of Al Jazeera. When I was in Baghdad, and I don't know if they've moved the office, but when I was there, their office was right round the corner from the Ministry of Information building, and we've been hearing in the past 40 minutes or so that the Ministry of Information is being pummeled. There can't be very much left of it at this point.
Simon,
it's coming for such sustained attack.
While you're talking, I think we're seeing the Al Jazeera correspondent live on the balcony there at the, would that be the Ministry of Information?
I'm just... John, I don't think that is still the Ministry of Information. I can't quite make it out from here. It might be the backside of the Ministry of Information building. I'm not sure if they're still capable of broadcasting live from the roof of that building, because we know the office block around it has been very, very heavily damaged by sustained bombing raids. And indeed, yesterday, when the Minister of Information was so confident that there were no American tanks on the streets of Baghdad, they actually drove some of the correspondents still in Baghdad around the city. They took them to the old Ministry of Information from where broadcasts used to be made, and they reported seeing signs of a very heavy battle at the ministry. Every single window in the building shot out, significant chunks of the building in just pieces all over the place. So hard to imagine that it can function as any kind of facility now, but it does indicate that there's very sustained battles now underway in that section of the city. The Ministry of Information, the Al Rashid Hotel, these are all very close by one another. It's a 3 or 4 minute walk from the Al Rashid to the Ministry of Information, and that seems to be the section of the city that the United States is now very heavily focused on militarily, John.